Thank you. Welcome to Mental Health Through Mental Science. I'm going to speak now on the self-perpetuating mechanics of problems. If it is conceded that knowledge is infinite, then it must also be conceded that ignorance is infinite. In order for there to be an infinite knowledge, there must also be the infinite possibility for the revelation of that knowledge. So our seeking should never end. We should never permit ourselves to reach a pre-established pinnacle, a concept of an ultimate, as far as knowledge of life is concerned. We seem much too tempted in our present culture to be willing to arrive at a point of comfort where we seem sufficiently comfortable materially and sufficiently protected emotionally that we don't feel any great need for the further pursuit of knowledge. We seem all too willing to develop ourselves only to the extent that is necessary to survive at a materialistic level. And then we seem to exhaust ourselves of the motives necessary to carry us on through inspiration to greater awareness, greater accomplishment, and a continuous development of self. Recently, I read in a report from a medical seminar that relative to other forms of life, man is supposed to live to be approximately 250 years of age. Also in this report, it was speculated that the time isn't too far distant in the future when medical science will be able to keep the human body alive for just about that length of time. But the conclusion of the report had to recognize that there would be a great conflict if that were made possible in the near future, because it is not conceivable that we would have a human expression of life anywhere in the near future that would have that much interest in life to want to live that long. It is my firm belief that we die from boredom and frustration, that those are the true causes of our death. The method by which we die varies: accident, ill health, breakdown of the body. But the cause of death has to ultimately be mental. I really believe that the cause of death more often is frustration or boredom or a combination of the two of these, simply because we are not able to sufficiently resolve the conflicts that appear in our mind over life, that we are not able to see life clearly enough as it truly is. We focus our attention more on what we are doing with life than on what life is in truth. Life in truth is perfect. With just a reasonable amount of contemplation, I think that truth is obvious to anyone, that life itself is perfect, it is complete, it isn't deficient, and it doesn't work against itself, that it is one force, not two, not a good and evil force, but one perfect force of life, always pressing to manifest its expression in a perfect manner. That in the experience of the human being, the human having a conscious faculty of mind and a will capable of being individually exercised, is equipped with all of the machinery he needs to individually oppose that effort. That in his own personal experience, each one of us is capable of setting ourselves in opposition to the purpose of the force of life within us, which is, of course, a perfect purpose. That in our ignorance, and by using that word, I don't mean that we are lacking in intelligence. I mean ignorance only as an act of ignoring the truth. But in our ignoring of this truth of life, we bring upon ourselves, self-imposed entirely, even though we may not always be consciously aware of it, we bring upon ourselves our own frustration. We stand on our right foot with our left foot and say, I can't run, and fail to recognize why we can't run. At the outset of our experience, our minds are conditioned for us. And by the time we reach an age which permits us the exercise of our capacities of acceptance and rejection on the basis of our own reasoning, our basic attitudes have been established. Our beliefs have been established. They already have roots. Then simply by the nature of the mechanics of our mind, we are compelled to go into our experience with the content that has already been accumulated in our memory. The fact that much, if not all, of the content of knowledge in our memory is inaccurate and untrue is something we remain unaware of, usually until we reach a later point in our experience where suffering causes us to begin to reconsider and to consider the possibility that there are some errors in our thinking. But up until that time, by the very machinery of our minds, we pretty well are compelled to assume that what we believe is accurate. Embracing these beliefs and projecting our experience upon them, we go innocently and sincerely into a world of frustration and confusion. And we try to explain the frustration and confusion to ourselves, but we try to explain it with a mind that is frustrated and confused. The very machinery of mind is that it has to recreate what is in it, and the only way that that process can be changed is by changing the content. As long as we continue to embrace what we believe and dedicate ourselves to it, then we have to continue to recreate those beliefs. The mind is such that it can be taught anything. The child is told about Santa Claus. He listens to the story with wide eyes, and he believes because he doesn't know any different. Whatever is being told to that mind, it is gullible, it accepts, and it believes. Maybe this is the first time that he learns to mistrust people. He believes the story of Santa Claus. He wants to believe it. It sounds beautiful, and it's being told to him by someone he loves and by someone who is an authority in his life. His mind cannot do anything at this point other than accept it. So he accepts the belief, and he has to believe in it. The fact that there is no truth in the belief is of no matter to his mind. He doesn't have an awareness of truth with which to meet the error yet. He has to then hold on to that belief until finally the holding on to it causes him a sufficient amount of discomfort that he anticipates that letting go of it will bring about a condition of less discomfort than continuing to hold on to it. And only at that point will he become willing to let go of the belief, or become willing to concede the possibility that he must let go of it, or to begin to even make investigations in this direction. Until then, he is committed to the mechanical processes of his mind, and the belief that he holds continues to try to produce evidence of its truth to his conscious mind. It verifies itself. When the individual looks out into his factual world and sees the evidence that seems to prove what is in his mind, then this simply helps him to confirm the truth of something in his own thought that is absolutely untrue. He is left with no alternative than to continue to remain dedicated to the problem in his own thought until that problem finally brings so much stress that he can't tolerate continuing in it any longer. And at that point, he then becomes willing to let go. By then, either emotionally or possibly in other ways also, he is now suffering to quite an extent. Then at this point, he is bewildered and he is searching, but his mind doesn't have any reference in truth in this area, so he has to be forced to open his mind to the possibility that there is another way. Up to this point, his mind couldn't do anything other than remain closed to the possibility. Finally, at this point, through his suffering, he is forced to open his mind to the possibility of a further and a better answer, only because he's unable to hold on to his present position any longer.